there were 7 books that sold like the first time I published this before I noticed a couple typos that I've corrected since then. But if you're one of those 7 people that's watching this later, just know that for number 11, there's some typos. So the typo is basically, I forgot to put the little 2 right there, so it should be 2i squared. And then for number 6, I put this as like F, G, H, K, J, K as the answer choices, so I was thinking E was K. So it's supposed to actually say K in the answer key. But let's go and start this now. So with complex numbers, what you need to remember before you get started is that I is equal to the square root of -1. I squared is equal to -1. Basically, I say that the most important one is I squared is equal to -1. That's the one you're going to see most oftenly used, because you use that for like rationalizing with these types of problems. So that's the one that like you really need to remember the most. Now, you also need to remember that you never want to have an I on bottom. So for instance, if I have something that says 2 over I, I'm going to want to multiply by I on top and bottom. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can get I squared on the bottom, which we know is equal to -1. So that way, that fixes the issue for me, because in math, we don't like having i's on the bottom. So if this becomes -1, I've fixed that problem. So now it would just be -2i. Now, if you had something like 2 over 1 minus I, we do something a little bit different, which is called multiplying by the conjugate, which basically just means you multiply by what's on the bottom, but just turn what's in front of I into a different sign. So this is a negative sign or a minus sign, so we're going to say that that's going to turn into a positive, sorry, so it would be times 1 plus I over 1 plus I. And then you just multiply that, and you fill in the I squared with -1. So that's what, those are the main things that people usually need to be reminded of before they start this chapter. So let's go to number 1. The sum of 2 minus 3i and -5 plus 2i is, so sum means we're adding, so we're adding these up. So let's combine our like terms. 2 plus -5 is going to be -3. And then our like terms, -3i plus 2i is going to be -i. So it's -3 minus I, which is going to be D. So, oh my God, some of these comments. Okay. Hold on. I'm trying to answer. Someone had a question. Do you do statistics? I aced that, but this stuff is confusing. Yeah, I have some statistics stuff that I already did all the statistics chapters in this book, I think, except I might have not recorded one. Right now I'm just trying to get like the videos done to put it on YouTube, but there's some already on YouTube, so you can check those out. Okay, so let's go to someone said stop talking so fast. Sorry, it's just like a thing I do. I'm trying to like be aware of it, but the reason I also post these on YouTube is because you can slow my voice down later if I start doing that, just so you know. On like the little video, there's like with the settings button, you can slow down or speed up how fast the video goes. So let's go to number 2. It says the difference between 2 minus 3i and -5 plus 2i is, so difference is subtracting. So this is saying we have 2 minus 3i and we're subtracting this whole entire thing. We're subtracting -5 plus 2i. That's important. You're not just subtracting one part of it. It has to be the whole thing. So we need to distribute this to each of these terms in parentheses and copy down the rest of the problem. So it would be negative times -5 is going to be positive. Negative times positive 2i is going to be -2i. So now we're going to combine our like terms. So then when we do that, we're going to get 7 minus 5i. So that would be J. So then let's go to number 3. It says 1 minus 4i plus its conjugate equals. Now remember what I said at the beginning of the video, conjugate is just we change the sign in front of I. So this is saying we have 1 minus 4i. Now we're going to add its conjugate, which is just 1, change the sign to plus 4i. So now we're going to just combine our like terms. 1 plus 1 is 2, and -4i plus 4i is just, that's going to cancel out to 0, so your answer is C. Someone asked, can you do arithmetic, please? Right now I'm trying to record these videos for, because I already did the arithmetic videos, so if you want to see more arithmetic videos on my YouTube, go to the Overcoming SAT Math playlist and go to the 3 reviews chapter video. So let's go to number 4, the product of 1 minus 4i and its conjugate equals, so product means multiplying. So product would be multiplying, so we're doing 1 minus 4i times its conjugate. Conjugate just means you change what's in front of I, the sign of it. So instead of minus, it's plus. So it'd be times 1 plus 4i. So now we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So that means we have to FOIL this out. FOIL is an acronym that stands for what you're going to multiply together. So F stands for I'm going to multiply the first things in the parentheses together, 1 times 1, which is just 1. O stands for I'm multiplying the outside things together, 1 times 4i, which is just plus 4i. I stands for I'm multiplying the inside things together, so negative 4i times 1, so minus 4i. And L stands for multiplying the last things in each parentheses together, so negative 4i times positive 4i, which is going to be negative 16i squared. So now I see that these cancel out, 4i minus 4i cancels out to 0, so then I have 1 minus 16i squared. Now remember how I told you a lot of the times you're going to be looking for that I squared because you're replacing it with negative 1. So that's what we're going to do here. If I see an I squared, I'm going to replace it with negative 1. When I do that, I get 1 plus 16, which is just 17, so the answer would be K. Where did I get 16? By doing the L step in FOIL, multiplying negative 4i times positive 4i. Thanks for liking and sharing the live, guys. Please like and share it with your friends if they are doing a SAT and ACT prep. So let's go to number 5. So it says 3 minus 4i squared is equal to, so this is one that a lot of people will distribute the 2 to like each of these and they'll say 3 squared and then they'll distribute it and say minus 4i squared. That's not how you do these. You have to remember that this means, that little 2 exponent means that you have this multiplied by itself. So you technically have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses, so that means you have to FOIL. So FOIL is the acronym that stands for what we're multiplying. F is the first things we're multiplying, so 3 times 3, which is 9. And then O is the outer things we're multiplying, 3 times negative 4i, which is negative 12i. I is the inner things we're multiplying, so negative 4i times 3, so negative 12i. L is the last things we're multiplying, so negative 4i times negative 4i, which is just going to be positive 16i squared. So now we're going to combine our like terms in the middle. So negative 12i minus 12i is going to be negative 24i. So this is going to be 9 minus negative 24i, or minus 24i, I mean. Plus, and remember, we can replace, anytime we see I squared, we can replace it with a negative 1. So it's going to be 16 times, instead of I squared, negative 1, which is just negative 16. So now what we're going to do is we have like terms of 9 minus 16. So 9 minus 16 is going to be negative 7. So then we get negative 24i minus 7. So it's going to be F. So let's go to number 6. So for number 6, we're going to simplify this by multiplying by the conjugates. Remember, we don't like those i's on the bottom in math. So the conjugate is just we're changing that sign in front of the I. So we're going to make this instead of plus minus and multiply by it on top and bottom. So now I'm going to multiply on top. 1 times this is just going to be 1 minus 2i. Now on bottom, this is 2 numbers plus or minus times 2 numbers or terms plus or minus. So this is a FOIL situation. I have to FOIL this out. So I have to multiply 1 times 1, which is just 1. Now I have to multiply negative 2i times 1, which is negative 2i. And then I have to multiply the inside terms, so 2i times 1 is 2i. And then I have to multiply the last terms, 2i times negative 2i, which is negative 4i squared. Now these are going to cancel out. Minus 2i plus 2i cancels out to 0. So now I have 1 minus 2i over 1 minus 4i squared. Now remember, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So we can say that this is 1 minus 2i over 1 minus 4 times, instead of I squared, let's replace that with a negative 1. So now this is going to be 1 minus 2i over 1, and then negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. So then this would just be 5 on the bottom, so it's 1 minus 2i over 5, so it would be A. So let's go to this next one. Again, when we don't like having i's on the bottom, so what we do is we multiply by the conjugate, which just means we change this sign to the opposite. So we change it to plus 7i and multiply by it on top and bottom. So this is going to be negative 8 plus 7i over negative 8 plus 7i. So now let's multiply 4i times all of this on top. So 4i times negative 8 is going to be negative 32i. 4i times 7i is going to be plus 28i squared. And then now let's do the bottom. So again, we have to FOIL the bottom because it's 2 terms plus or minus times 2 terms plus or minus. So we're FOILing that. So negative 8 times negative 8 is going to be positive 64. And then we have negative 8 times 7, which is going to be negative 56i. I meant to say 7i, sorry. And then we have negative 7i times negative 8, which is going to be positive 56i. And then we have negative 7i times 7i is going to be negative 49i squared. Now these are going to cancel out. Negative 56i plus 56i is just 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all the I squareds with negative 1. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to copy down the rest, and everywhere I see an I squared, I'm going to put a negative 1. So then this is going to turn into this. All I did was replace the I squareds with negative 1. And now I just have to work this all out, basically, like multiply and combine my like terms. So I have negative 32i, and then minus 28 on top, over, and this is going to be 64 plus 49 here. So then I would just need to add the numbers on the bottom, and that's going to give me 113 on the bottom, and it's going to be negative 32i minus 28 on top. So it's going to be H for this one. So let's go to number 8. Which of the following is equivalent to I to the 37th? Okay, I to the 37th, what you're going to do with these types of problems is you basically rewrite it in a way where you can use the other information you know about i's, like I squared is equal to negative 1, and I to the 4th is equal to positive 1. That's another one that's helpful. So with this one, I'm going to say, I can say that I to the 37th is equal to I times I to the 36th, because the product rule says that we would add the exponents and we get the same thing. I'm just kind of using it in reverse. And then I'm going to say, okay, I have I times I to the 36th. I could use the power of the power rule kind of in reverse to say that this is I to the 4th to the 9th power, because 4 times 9 is 36. The reason I'm doing that is because the I information that we've memorized can be used to help me simplify this. So I could say I to the 4th is the same thing as 1. So I could plug in a 1 for I to the 4th, and then just say I'm raising that to the 9th power. So then 1 to the 9th is just going to be 1, so 1 times I is just I. So the answer would be A. So let's go to number 9. Which of the following is equivalent to all of this? So again, remember these guys right here. These are going to be like the most helpful ones. Usually it's I squared, but I to the 4th can come up sometimes as well. So I squared is equal to negative 1, and I to the 4th is equal to 1. So we're just going to replace I to the 4th with 1. I'm going to copy down the 1 over I part. And then I'm going to say minus 1 over, remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So now I have 1 plus 1 over I, and then this is going to be plus 1. So that's going to be 2 plus 1 over I. But remember, we don't like having i's on the bottom. So for this portion right here, I'm going to fix that by multiplying by I on top and bottom. So then it's going to be 2 plus I over I squared. And remember, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So I can say this is 2 plus I over negative 1, which is the same thing as 2 minus I. So it would be, that's G. So then let's go to number 10. We have this equation right here. Which of the following is a solution to the equation shown above? And I put like a little note. They won't give you this many choices, but I just wanted to like add some extra options to make it more challenging. So right over here, we see that we have i's involved. That's because there's going to be imaginary roots that we have to find with this. So the way you do this is pretty much the same way that you're used to doing it with regular like factoring and quadratic formula stuff, where you just use the quadratic formula. And in this case, you're just going to have some i's involved. So the quadratic formula says that we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a is going to give us what our x value is, what our solution is. Now we know what a, b, and c are based on this formula or this equation up here. So a is going to be the number in front of x squared, so a is equal to negative 1. B is going to be equal to the number being multiplied by x, so negative 10. And then c is the number floating by itself, so it's going to be equal to negative 30. Now all I have to do is plug these values in for a, b, and c into this equation. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say this is equal to negative of negative 10 plus or minus the square root of, that's going to be negative 10 squared minus 4 times a is negative 1, c is negative 30. All of this is under the square root, and all of that is going to be over 2 times a is negative 1. So now we're going to say the negative of negative 10 is positive 10, plus or minus, and this is going to be the square root of, so then you're basically like just put this all in your calculator, and that's going to be 100 minus 100 minus 120, so then you get negative 20 inside the square root, and then it's going to be all over negative 2. So now what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, how can I simplify this? And whenever you see a negative inside of a square root, you should think, okay, I have to take out an I basically. So if there's a negative inside the square root, just take out an I. So this would be 10 plus or minus I root 20, and then you keep the positive version on the inside over negative 2, and then you can start simplifying the square root further and saying that 20 is the same thing as 5 times 4. So you can say, oh, 4 is a perfect square. I could take out a 2 for that, and I could say 10 plus or minus 2i, keep the 5 on the inside, over negative 2 is what I have right here, and then I'm going to simplify this further by dividing by the common factor of, what could I divide by? I'm going to just divide by negative 2, yeah. So negative 2 right here, so then that would be 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5, plus or minus 2i root 5 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative I root 5. So then it's negative 5 plus or minus I root 5. So then let's see which of those options it says. So that would be number 3 and number 4. So that would be B right here. Okay, so let's go to number 11. It says the expression right here simplifies to, and remember there's a typo, so this was supposed to have like a little 2 right there. So remember that I squared is equal to negative 1. That's something that we memorized. So I'm going to replace I squared with negative 1. So, and I also know that I cubed, so I just saw that right there, I cubed is going to be equal to, which one's that? That's negative 1 times root 1, so negative I. You can memorize those, or you can use logic like I just did. So like the logical way is saying that root negative 1 is equal to I. So like root negative 1 times root negative 1 equals I squared. So that's just negative 1. And if you were to cube it, it would be negative 1 times root of negative 1. So that's negative I basically. So you can memorize those or use logic. So then you would say 6 times, that's going to be negative I, plus 2 times negative 1, plus 5i minus 12. So then this is going to be negative 6i minus 2 plus 5i minus 12. So now let's combine our like terms of negative 6i plus 5i, and that's going to be negative I. And then combine our like terms of negative 2 and minus 12, so that's going to be negative 14. So it's going to be negative I minus 14, so that would be G right there. So let's go to number 12, and this is a foiling problem because we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So let's multiply the first terms times each other, x times x, so that's x squared, O stands for outer terms we're multiplying, so negative I times x, so that's going to be negative ix. I stands for the inside we're multiplying, so negative I times x, so negative ix. And L stands for the last things we're multiplying, negative I times negative I, so plus I squared. So then this would be x squared, and we're going to combine these like terms, and that's going to be negative 2ix plus, and that's going to be I squared. Now remember, I squared can be replaced with negative 1, so this would be x squared minus 2ix minus 1. So that would be E.